Somebody should go wrangle Tony. Seriously.
Do you want me to go do it? I can go give him a nudge.
Maybe you could ask someone to do it, because you're important here. We might.
All right, I will go nudge Tony.
Okay, Jennifer's first. Jennifer's first, but you don't need to sit in order. Let's not worry about that.
But yeah, and I'm sure they are going to sing. No, that's
Hey, everybody on stage real quick. After she announces your name, give me just a second and I'll pull your slides up if you have any. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course.
We may have one more.
One more set of slides or one more presenter?
Christopher Bow.
I do have their slides.
Yeah, but they're not here.
Okay.
But we might need something short on start without Tony.
Yeah, I went and nudged him.
Okay. Tony's doing his breakfast for people who are interested in applying to SEPA in his category. I think.
Late all week, right? He should have let you take the lead until he got it. Because I have to leave it at some
Oh, okay. Let's get going then.
Yeah, I think we should.
Yes. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started, everyone. Good morning. Good to see you all. So we have a really exciting session planned here this morning. We're very fortunate to have these folks from different institutes and centers from the NIH joining us. And I am Jeannie Chowning. I am the PI on Frontiers in Cancer Research at Fred Hutch Cancer Center in Seattle, Washington, and also on Pathways to Cancer Research, the R25 YES, also with Dave Venier as an MPI. So delighted to be here with you this morning. The format for this is that each of our guests will have a few minutes to talk about their institute or center. And at the conclusion of that, we'll break out and they'll take their tag here to one of the tables. We'll spread out across the room here. And you'll be able to circulate among the tables. Perhaps there's a center that really interests you, that you feel like your SEPA is aligned, and you'll have a chance to have a one-on-one interaction and conversation with them about your ideas. And so this is really a great chance to explore the funding interests of these various institutes, centers, and offices. So we're going to start with Dr. Jennifer Baumgartner from the National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health to give us just a quick overview of that center.
Great. Can you hear me? Good morning. Hi, nice to see you all. My name is Jenny Baumgartner,
and I am a program director at the National Center for Complementary Integrative Health, or NCCIH for short. So I'm actually filling in for Dr. Lene Mudd, who is the scientific contact for this SEPA funding opportunity, but just as passionate about the mission of the SEPA program, and delighted to be here. So I don't have slides, so I thought we'd just kind of have a conversation here. Our mission at NCCIH is to determine through rigorous scientific investigation the fundamental science, usefulness, and safety of complementary integrative health approaches and interventions, and their role in improving health, healthcare, as well as resiliency. So what we do is we support programs and outreach in this population to appease that mission. And when I say complementary integrative health, what I really mean is these nutritional, psychological, physical approaches that may have originated outside of conventional healthcare. So such as, plant-based products, natural products, mind-body approaches such as mindfulness, yoga, music, and arts-based interventions, and as well as these more multi-component interventions that include more than one of these approaches within the same type of intervention. And again, the extent to which they may improve health, healthcare, and resilience of individuals, of populations as well. We do have two branches within NCCIH, which are pretty small, IC, but nevertheless pretty mighty. This is the clinical branch where I sit, as well as the basic mechanistic branch. The clinical branch is, we're really interested in, does the thing work, right? And does it work in specific settings? If we're looking at mindfulness, does mindfulness work for particular populations, for health conditions? Can we disseminate and implement it, right? Does it work in real life settings, such as healthcare settings? And the basic mechanistic branch is more interested in, what are the underlying mechanisms that support this intervention at the level of the mind, body, and brain. So if you have students that are interested in any of that, we'll highly encourage you to apply. Another thing I wanted to highlight is our interest, and it's really a crux of our strategic plan, is looking at the whole person. So I think there's this growing appreciation that, to modulate health, to promote resiliency, you have to look at multiple layers of influence, not just one organ system, right? So it's more of a holistic appreciation of health. And this is really just woven throughout our strategic plan. And I think students have a growing understanding that, health of the person isn't just enough. Health of communities, health of different ecosystems. So I think, this concept, although it is growing legs, we need the future to help us come up with how to study this, right? It's pretty difficult, and I think your students, might be interested in this concept. What else? Diversity, we're very invested in supporting diverse budding scientists from underrepresented communities, absolutely to us. And, the last thing I'll say about us, or I guess about myself, is, this is personal to me. So my sister is actually a middle school science teacher, and it's tremendous what she can actually do really on her own. And I think the concepts and our mission are very much aligned with this generation. So mental health, resiliency, things like this, whole person health, mindfulness, yoga, all these things are near and dear to this generation as well. So the extent to which we can support, future scientists to advance our mission would be fantastic. And I think I'll stop there. Nice to meet you all. I'm happy to answer questions later.
Thank you so much. Okay, I think Dr. Niraj Agarwal, have you joined us here?
Oh, yes.
Yes, so good. From the National Eye Institute. We thought he was going to be on Zoom, but he's in person, so we're delighted.
Oh, thank you. Good morning. So I'm Niraj Agarwal. I'm at National Eye Institute, and I'm a program director for training. So I take care of all the graduate students, postdocs, and clinician scientists early in their career. And so, as I said, I'm in National Eye Institute. So the mission of our institute is to treat the blinding eye diseases and improve the quality of life. So we are very interested in any application which is dealing and proposing to do research in the area of vision research pertaining to ophthalmology and optometry included into that. So, for example, I'll give you one of the SEPA grants which we funded through NIGMS was related to by a professor whose daughter was blind, visually impaired. So he wrote a computer program, software program, for her to be able to navigate internet and those kind of things. So anything related to do with, vision and vision loss and to improve the quality, we will be very interested. So we totally will be looking for anything to do with bioinformatics, then data science, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and related to vision and vision loss. And I was sitting on a table before I got here on this podium, and I was talking to somebody from Mississippi, and she is involved in pharmaceutical research and drug development, So we were talking like how the contact lenses can be used, to slow drug delivery into eye, like for example, glaucoma. Patients, they are supposed to be putting the drops every day in the morning so that their pressure will be kept low through the day. So compliance is a big issue in glaucoma patients, So if we can develop anything to do where they don't have to remember to put the drops every day, once a month or something like that, for slow drug delivery, into the eye system, that will be very, very good. So we are looking for all kind of applications and their use in vision. And we do appreciate diversity. So we are very much interested into that aspects of research also. So I think I will stop here. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Next, we have Diane Adger-Johnson, who will speak to us about the interests of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases.
So I have slides, but there are not many. No, they're about 30 now. So basically, I just wanted to say good morning, and it's good to be back at SciEd. As Tony knows, I used to be a part of this program prior to being here. So right now, I'm in the office of the Division of the Director of Extramural Activities in the Office of Research Training and Special Programs. And that is where our SEPA program is housed. You've probably seen this a lot this week. This just gives you an organizational chart of NIH and the 27 institutes and centers, and NIAID is among them. This here is just a schematic of our budget allocations, if you will. The larger the bubble here, the more money the institute has. So NIAID's mission is to conduct and support basic and applied research to better understand, treat, and ultimately prevent infectious, immunologic, and allergic diseases. We have a dual mandate, if you will, because we focus on emerging and re-emerging diseases throughout the nation and globally. For more than 65 years, NIAID has had new therapeutics, vaccines, diagnostic tests, and other technologies that have improved the health of millions of Americans and, as I said, globally around the world. So our institute structure is mainly extramural, which in our extramural programs, that's where all of your grants are brought in and are funded through our extramural divisions. We have 3 extramural divisions, including ours, which would be Division of AIDS, Division of Allergy, Immunology, and Transplantation, and the Division of Microbiology and Infectious Diseases. Our intramural programs include both the Division of Intramural Research and our Vaccine Research Center, as well as we have a division of clinical research too. And speaking of allergies, my allergies are killing me, so if I start like choking, you know why. So yeah, grasses are high. So here is the schematic of some of our strategic research priorities. Mainly As you probably know, in the last two to 3 years, we've been very involved in the SARS-CoV-2 as well as COVID-19, trying to develop vaccines and medical countermeasures, as well as looking at post-sequelae and long-term COVID. We're in the process of trying to develop universal influenza vaccines that will enhance effectiveness of seasonal influenza vaccine development. Our medical countermeasures are important as it relates to emerging and re-emerging infections, and that could include TB, West Nile, malaria, cholera, as well as other emerging things like dengue and those kinds of Lyme diseases and things of that nature. So as you can see, we have a plethora of diseases and pathogens that our institute oversee and promote for research and development. Now, vaccines for HIV is a continuing process for us. We're hopeful that we will one day get a vaccine, but right now we have lots of therapies and prevention modalities to support that effort in treatment of HIV and AIDS. And finally, our prevention and treatment of immune-mediated diseases, which can include lupus, atopic dermatitis, allergic rhinitis, asthma, and other autoimmune infections. These are just some, but there are others that we also focus on, like public health. Global health is very important. As you know, global health is really impacted by the different types of climate conditions, climate change, demographics, and urbanization. Those all impact the vector-borne diseases, parasitic diseases, and other respiratory infections throughout the country. So I think, did this stop on me? Okay. So I think I'm going to end up here. It's not moving. Okay. So I'll end up here just to give you a list of some of the sites and resources. I guess the attendees will have access to the slides.
I believe so.
Yeah, and I do have handouts if you should join my table. We're looking for coursework, skills development, mentoring, hands-on science experience. We've promoted and supported gaming processes, and we supported advanced courses in the various areas of research that are in our portfolio. We're definitely looking to have serious outreach to diverse populations because they are the next generation of scientists that we want to promote and bring through our different workforce diversity issue and programs. So without that, I hope you can join my table. I have lots of information to share outside of the things I've done here. And of course, go infectious disease.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Next, we have Dr. Tina Gatlin from the National Institute of Biomedical Imaging and Bioengineering.
So good morning, everyone. I am a training program director in the extramural division of interdisciplinary training at the National Institute of Biomedical Imaging and Bioengineering, or NIBIB. And so I am very happy to be here and also happy that NIBIB is now a part of the SEPA family. And I'm also pleased that we will soon be making our first SEPA award. So just to, start off at the bat with our, our specific interests in SEPA, in the SEPA program, and this is language that you can find within the program announcement. So to go over, so NIBIB through SEPA, we will fund educational outreach and research activities that provide early exposure to biomedical engineering research, also increased understanding of research engineering concepts and their application in medicine and biology, also providing age-appropriate experiences that engage participants in the design, building, and testing of tools and methods to address questions and problems in human biology and disease, and also providing enhanced understanding and interest in biomedical engineering as a career path, and related career opportunities and guidance to help make biomedical engineering career pathways more accessible for students from diverse backgrounds, and to better prepare students for careers in biomedical engineering. So overall, the activities should be in one or more of the areas relevant to NIBIB's scientific programs. And to speak more to NIBIB's scientific interests, so first to address is the fact that NIBIB is a small institute within the NIH ecosystem, and so this graph is a different depiction of what Diane was showing before in terms of the size of the different institutes in relation to their budgets that are appropriated by Congress. So NIBIB is, less than 1% of the size of NIH as a whole. And so our mission is necessarily focused. And so we are largely a technology development-driven institute, so developing technologies that can be more broadly applicable to biomedical research versus the disease categorical institutes, which might be a little more focused on applying technologies to their particular research interests. So you can find some level of research funding across the NIH in bioengineering. And just as a highlight here, so NCI, which is the largest of the NIH institutes, so they have a very large portfolio in biomedical imaging and bioengineering. And the size of their budget is actually larger than the entire budget of NIH. And so it's important, like if you have a proposal idea, to reach out so we can determine mission fit, since we do share kind of a large border with NCI and a border with most ICs for that matter. So NIBIB's position is that engineering is essential for progress in biomedical research and in improving healthcare, whether it be through developing technologies for therapeutic devices or imaging technologies or molecular cellular imaging, molecular or cellular engineering, or developing biosensors at the point of care. And then along with this development, there is a heavy emphasis on modeling, computation, and machine intelligence. So NIBIB, it's organized into 4 extramural divisions. So, a suggested place to start is to go to the nibib.nih.gov website and explore kind of the focus for each of the divisions. And we have 3 science divisions, so their focus is, in just the broad areas of bioengineering, bioimaging, and informatics. And then there's also the training division, of which I'm a part. So beyond interest in SEPA, if there's interest, if you have interest or your students in the future have interest in other funding opportunities, this is just a listing per career level of the number of different funding opportunities in research education, in training, and also diversity-focused NOFOs, or notice as a funding opportunity that NIBIB we either lead or we participate on. So this isn't a comprehensive list, and I'm not meaning to go over, but it's meant to just kind of illustrate that NIBIB, even though we are a small institute, we do have a large commitment in DEIA initiatives, as indicated by the stars here. And this slide, it's actually, I need to update it. So it doesn't even include like the recent DEI initiatives that have come out as a result of the Unite initiative that NIBIB is pretty comprehensively signed on to. And so with that, thank you for your kind attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions later. And go bioengineering.
I see we have some teams here, okay. Thank you so much. Maria Carranza, Dr. Maria Carranza from National Institute on Aging is next.
Oops. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you today to talk to you about the National Institute on Aging's priorities. So NIA recently joined the SEPA effort, and we are very excited and really want to encourage applications that reflect the mission of the NIA, which is to support research on aging, the aging process, and diseases and conditions associated with growing older, such as Alzheimer's disease and Alzheimer's disease-related dementias. NIA is actually the largest funder of research on Alzheimer's disease. So applications are encouraged that reflect the interest of all 4 of NIA's scientific divisions, and these range widely from aging biology to neuroscience to social and behavioral research to gerontology and clinical geriatrics. So this is really a very broad spectrum of scientific interests that your projects could be focused on. So NIA will support educational activities that enhance the diversity of the biomedical research workforce. And NIA is also highly committed to reducing health disparities among older adults through supporting projects that reflect the life course perspective. So to that effect, NIA is seeking applications that, number one, are tailored learning opportunities to the specific target audience that you may have. Number two, projects that have an emphasis on explaining the relevance of aging and the aging process and the science of aging to students and their families. So intergenerational projects are also highly encouraged. And 3, opportunities that engage students with an interest in science and foster their development as future scientists. So I'm very happy to discuss any ideas that you may have at the tables. And again, thank you for being here. It's a pleasure to meet you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, next, Dr. Christopher Bao from National Institute of Nursing Research.
I always have to raise the mic. Good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Bao. As was mentioned, I'm from the National Institute of Nursing Research. I'm a team lead there for special programs, which includes the Small Business and Technology Program, the training program, and the HIV/AIDS program. The mission at NINR is to lead nursing science to solve pressing health challenges and inform practice and policy, optimizing health and advancing health equity into the future. We have guiding principles that should encompass all of our research and projects. They are ones that tackle pressing health challenges and stimulate discoveries to prepare for, prevent, and address tomorrow's health challenges. And you can see a couple of those listed here. We have a research framework and a new strategic plan which we began in 2022. In the past, much of what we focused on was around symptom science and clinical research, and now we're expanding that to include 5 research lenses, which I've listed here. One of which is social determinants of health, health equity, population and community health, prevention, health promotion, and systems and models of care. If you look at our research framework, again, this is for our new strategic plan. We have the 3 lenses around the bottom: population, community health, systems and models of care, prevention, and health promotion, with an overarching lens to incorporate social determinants of health and a view on health equity. And we are expanding, as you might think, nursing research in a traditional clinical setting. We're expanding that to include a variety of different settings where nurses may work, including justice settings, schools, homes, long-term care facilities, and so forth. So I also want to please encourage you to join the table. I'd be happy to speak with you about any of our projects. One thing I will say is that we, as was mentioned a couple of times here, we are disease agnostic. We cover a lot of different areas. We have a lot of different, projects that fit a lot of different other institutes. So we do have a lot of other overlap. We are one of the two institutes at the NIH is practice-focused, the other being the dental and craniofacial research. So please do stop by and talk to us, talk to me about a potential project. Go nursing.
Thank you so much. Next, Dr. Anissa Brown from the National Institute of Dental and Craniofacial Research, NIDCR.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you all for staying till the end. And thank you for your interest and commitment to SEPA. So I am Anissa Brown, and I'm here to provide an overview of NIDCRs, which is the National Institute of Dental and Craniofacial Research, and our expectations for the SEPA program. So I am Anissa Brown. I am the Chief of Research Training and Career Development, where the SEPA program is housed at NIDCR. I am also a member of the team, and so there are two other individuals at RTCDB, and that is Dr. Rachel Saray and Dr. Shobha Theramangalathu. And so the mission for NIDCR is to advance fundamental knowledge about dental, oral, and craniofacial health and disease, and to translate these findings into prevention, early detection, and treatment strategies that improve overall health for all, and that goes across all of the lifespan. The NIDCR has 5 strategic priorities. 4 and 5 are most related to SEPA. The first one being integrate oral and general health. The second, precision dental medicine. The third, translation and implementation. And the fourth, diverse research pipeline. And last, partnering and collaboration. Expectations for SEPA applications that are of interest to NIDCR is that they will align with the mission, as I just mentioned, that an applicant will partner with a dental school, and similar to as mentioned from other NIH institutes, is encourage broadening participation. The educational outreach and research activities could include and are not limited to just courses for skills development, research experiences, mentorship, curriculum or methods development, and outreach. And so I do want to take this opportunity just to share some helpful hints, and these are things that I'm sure you've heard from other program officers that you will also probably read in the Notice of Funding Opportunity announcement, but I do want to share a few. And although they're not stated here, the 2 most important is to read the Notice of Funding Opportunity a couple of times, to contact your program officer, and so we're here today to answer your questions, but this is not the one and only opportunity, and this goes for all funding opportunities at the NIH. Next is engage your teachers in evaluations as you're developing your application. So not once your application is developed, but as you are developing the details of your research plan. As you all know, many of the sessions at this meeting were dedicated to evaluation. Evaluation is very important. Your goals should be measurable. The specific aims should be clearly articulated, and anticipated outcomes should be included. There should be potential to build a sustainable STEM education capacity for the community, the potential for replication. Reviewers love visuals to be able to get a sense of your goals and milestones. And typically, applications include 3 specific aims, and again, I emphasize typically. And then again, the importance of visuals, and these can be used to summarize data. You can use pictures, charts, and tables. And so I'm just going to end and let you know that you can get more information about NIDCR and the research training development. We have a website. We also have a newsletter. I encourage you to encourage your participants, your students, your colleagues to subscribe to our newsletter. Within our newsletter, we have a section that is dedicated to training. Within this section, we showcase research accomplishments, but we also offer this as an opportunity to talk about upcoming events, research findings, and funding opportunities. And of course, we are on social media, and I will be at a table answering questions today, and then also my email is available here. So thank you for your attention. And go dental.
Thank you, and I apologize for mispronouncing your name, Dr. Anissa Brown.
That's okay.
Okay, and then Dr. Brian Kim from the Office of Data Science Strategy.
Hello, good morning. My name is Brian Kim, and I'm a program director in the Office of Data Science Strategy at NIH. Today I'll be giving an overview of our involvement in the SEPA program, along with providing information about our office. So our office was established in 2018. It was one of the offices within the Office of Director, and is led by the Associate Director, Dr. Susan Gregorick, and our Deputy Director, Dr. Belinda Seto. One of the main goals of ODSS is to provide the coordination and implementation of the NIH strategic planning and for data science through scientific, technical, and operational collaboration with our institutes. This includes building strong and diverse data science communities and partnerships. Building a strong data science community in health research includes different types of health researchers. For example, those who are data science literate and not intimidated in data science space and can read and understand outcomes resulting from data science approaches. It also includes those who are data science savvy. These people are basically the data science literate and actively use and collaborate with other data scientists. And then there are the data scientists who are the skilled and experienced in the data science area. And we basically need to work together as a group and collaborate with all these levels to build a strong data science community. So the Training Workforce Initiatives Community Engagement Team that I work in, also known as TWICE, is led by Dr. Allison Lin and was established by ODSS to build a stronger and broader data science community for turning discoveries into health. As described in the table, we highlight a number of related activities related to the SEPA program. For example, programs focused on supporting trainees in data science training and education for pre-college all the way through the investigators. And like within the SEPA community, we understand the importance of early intervention in research education. We're really happy to work with Dr. Tony Beck to co-fund SEPA programs that have data science focused. And noted here are two exemplar SEPA projects that we're currently funding. The first project is from Dr. Teresa Gillespie. Dr. Gillespie, if you want to raise your hand. and Dr. Adam Marcus from Emory University, titled Data Detectives, Using Real Data to Solve Real Community Health Problems. This novel experiential problem-based learning approach uses population-based big data to engage diverse middle school students to apply real data to solve real community health problems. Sorry. I'm sorry about that. My notes are too many notes. So I need to. How do I go down to notes? Go down here. Oh, there you go. Okay, thank you. And the second project is from the Health Resources in Action organization, titled the Knox Scholar Data Science Research Program, in partnership with MIT. The team developed the Knox Scholar Program, which is a career readiness program for Boston youth, typically underrepresented in STEM fields. And we get many questions about what do you mean by engagement in data science? And as you know, data science is a very broad, and data science can include like AI, ML, bioinformatics, and clinical informatics. For young students, it's very important to lay the foundation so that they can explore the possibilities in data science. Like things like including mathematics, introduction to what data science is, coding, data visualization, pattern recognition, modeling, and simulation. And we're looking for applications that, with innovative ways to work with these data science topics into the research education program. And whatever you choose, whatever topic you choose, we strongly encourage applications that enhance the foundational knowledge of data ethics, equity, and cybersecurity in an age-appropriate fashion. And we strongly feel that these two areas should be the foundation for any data science training, and the earlier this gets planted, the better. Over the last couple of days, I've been really impressed with the talks I've heard and learned a great deal about how much can be done and about the great ways to engage young students in the research education space. And we want to encourage you to critically think about the different ways to help your students to be a part of the data science community, starting from becoming data science literate. And we want to work with you and open suggestions on what we can do to engage your students. Data science is usually, it's a uniquely suitable area for the young. In fact, I just learned about this digital native generation. My 1-year-old, like my 1.5-year-old son, basically knows how to FaceTime my parents. That's the kind of digital native kind of generation there. So you can Google it. It's on Wikipedia. And this group, which is according to ChatGPT, is someone who's born into the presence of digital technology or in the information age. And there's this natural interest and curiosity in the digital space for this group, and we want to capitalize them to help them develop into strong members of the data science community. So let us know and contact us if you have any ideas to help us grow and work together in this data science field. And lastly, if you're interested in learning about ODSS and the data science updates at NIH, please point your mobile cameras here, or I'll have this screen up later, and it will lead you to the listserv sign-up sheet. And lastly, and this is our TWICE team led by Dr. Allison Lin, Program Director Dr. Rafa Isafehi, Program Analyst Evelyn Botchway, and Training Specialist Nick Andrade. And here are some ODSS-related job website information, such as the NIH Data Science Job Board. So if you know anyone who has any kind of data expertise at any kind of levels, from entry to expert, please let them know about this job website, which is a site that has federally open positions using data talent. And if you want to learn more about our program, I invite you to stop by our office and go data science.
I think you can agree that this is a really exciting development. So many connections that are possible here with the SEPA community, and I hope you take advantage of these opportunities. Before we break out into our roundtables, can we have a round of applause for our panelists, please? Thank you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy days to come and talk to the Science Education Partnership community. The way the next half hour will work is the panelists will come down to the tables. They'll bring their stands with them, and you'll have half an hour to mingle and ask questions. I'll give you a heads up at the halfway point, so in about 15 minutes, and then we'll move on with the rest of our program today. So thanks everybody again, and go ahead and move on down to the tables. Pick a table, spread out, and thanks again. Thank you. Call out the institute, and you can raise your hand where you are so people can find you. So the National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health, right over there. National Eye Institute, where are you at? Okay. National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, right here. National Institute of Biomedical Imaging and Bioengineering. Over there. Okay. National Institute on Aging. Over there. Great. And National Institute of Nursing Research. Nursing Research in the middle there. Office of Data Science Strategy. Up here. And the National Institute of Dental and Craniofacial Research, right there. So please take advantage of this great opportunity. Okay, 15 more minutes. We're about the halfway point. Okay, it's 9:45, so we're officially going to transition into our break time. The break is until 10, and please come back where we have a keynote speaker that you won't want to miss, Dr. Jason Glenn. And again, thank you so much to all the NIH institutes and centers who participated today.
Good morning. Good morning. It's wonderful to see so many people in the ballroom on our very last day of a very special week together. Thank you so much for your presence today and throughout this conference. I hope you've enjoyed it. We'll talk more soon, but I did want to acknowledge that this is our last time together, and I hope this has been a positive experience for you. We still have some absolutely wonderful programming left in the day, and we look forward to getting started with that. This is our keynote speaker who will be speaking with us, but I'm not going to introduce our amazing keynote speaker. I will let the equally amazing Ilea Stites from the University of Chicago introduce. Ilea has been instrumental. She's a member of our organizing committee, and the moment we were talking about looking for a keynote speaker, she's like, "You've got to get Dr. Glenn. We've got to get Dr. Glenn." And so it's a real blessing for Dr. Glenn to be in our presence today and for Ilea to have made this connection with this community. So thank you, Ilea, and I will let you make further introductions.
Thank you. I know, right? Thank you, Kristen. What's the relationship between a biomedical understanding of the world and human health inequities? The theoretical approach of the history of science is about critically investigating how and why we think what we think. Historians of science examine how specific subjects get taken up as objects of study, including looking at the motivations of how research is funded and how those funding mechanisms drive the knowledge that is produced. This approach also investigates the influence of culture on perception and on the interpretation of data. Today, it is my honor and privilege to introduce Dr. Jason Glenn, Associate Professor of the History of Medicine and Philosophy of Medicine at the University of Kansas Medical Center, whose work illuminates the inextricably intertwined relationship between knowledge, behavior, authority, and power. Dr. Glenn's research takes the approach of translational science, making the history of science and medicine directly applicable to solving local inequities of health and well-being. His work examines the relationship between the production of biomedical knowledge and, perhaps the largest apparatus of state power, mass incarceration. His areas of specialty include the history of drug policy in the United States, the ethics and history of human subjects research, health inequities research, and the social and structural determinants of health. Today, Dr. Glenn is coming to us live from my hometown of Kansas City. It's okay. Anybody? It's fine. With a keynote entitled Envisioning Repair in Biomedicine, Addressing Histories of Harm from Racism in Research and Clinical Care. Please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker, Dr. Jason Glenn.
Thanks so much, Ilea. And thank you all for having me, for hosting me. It is my pleasure to be with you this morning. And I sincerely wish I could be there with you in person. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All right, I'm going to share my screen as soon as the host enables screen sharing for me. There we go. All right, I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to go full screen mode. There we go. All right. So good morning. Once again, Jason Glenn, Associate Professor in the Department of History, Philosophy, and Medicine. I am a historian of science by training, and I did not even know that that existed when I first began college. And part of this discussion is about, how we find our mission in life. And to do that, I'd love to start out with one of the scholars whose shoulders that I stand upon, Frantz Fanon, in his Wretched of the Earth, where he wrote that each generation must, out of relative obscurity, discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it. So I wanted to talk to you all about finding our missions and give you an example about the mission that I found for myself and how hopefully it can inspire folks in whatever walks of life that you find yourself, figuring out how we can act upon this world in ways that fulfill our mission and not betray it, right? So I asked the young scholars in the room to think about this question during this talk, and hopefully you've been thinking about this already for the entire conference, right? What is the mission of your generation? And how can I make sure that I gleam onto that mission and make sure that I fulfill it? For myself, my mission was trying to figure out how to decolonize racism out of the biomedical sciences. There are a number of domains of systemic racism in medicine, and I won't be able to talk about all of them because they're so vast, but they include cultivating and propagating and holding the idea of race as an indicator of biogenetic difference. Along those lines, this history includes 18th and 19th century efforts to place religious and natural philosophical theories of race into a discourse of biology. The racialization systemic racism in medicine also includes racialization of standard allopathic medical practice, right? That includes the generation of racialized biomedical knowledge. It includes race corrections and clinical algorithmic decision-making. Also includes bias in the clinical encounter. A third domain is the exploitation and abuse of racialized others in the production of biomedical knowledge. And that's the long history of exploitative, abusive research that has been employed in the production of biomedical knowledge. This includes experimentation on slaves, on prisoners, on poor people of color, and really on poor people from other countries. And this has been a heavy emphasis on people who have been institutionalized. So this includes people in orphans, people in mental asylums, and mental health hospitals. This long history that we've inherited had only gone through reform as few as 40 years ago. We're talking about in the 1970s. Then finally, we can talk about the mechanisms by which structural racism impacts clinical care. All of these are domains of systemic racism in medicine that we, as our generation, have had to figure out, what are we going to do to address? This includes trying to unthink racialized difference. And I want to point out to you guys, just to have as our baseline, right? I always feel like I need to remind folks of this, that prior to the 16th century, humans did not have a concept of race and did not categorize each other according to phenotype. The primary method of categorization was by religion and or ancestry. That's how you were categorized, that's how you were thought of, who your ancestors were, and the gods that you worshiped. This is a recent phenomena in human history. And if it is such a recent phenomena in human history, right, when we talk about the 4 million years of human history, we're talking about roughly 500 years of thinking in terms of race. That means we can unthink that too. And it doesn't mean that that's the natural way that humans have to see and categorize. But it was only through colonization that concepts of a by nature difference were conceptually mapped onto the physiognomies of people of color, and these assumptions, right, that those physiognomies were perfect proxies for innate biological differences between groups of people. Now, the racialization of medical thinking is the process that translates the racial folklore circulating in the larger society into a medical doctrine of perceived and usually imaginary racial differences. And this is the system of biomedicine that we've largely inherited. Even with all of its benefits that it's brought us, it has also brought us this legacy. And this is the legacy that we are attempting to decolonize. We can see racialization at work in medicine in a number of different ways. And for those of you who recognize the clip of the video playing on the left side, you get bonus points this morning. But they include the pervasive and socially and structurally determined health inequities. Also, a lack of universal health care. It's one of the major challenges that we have in our society. Why has the US so resisted having universal health care? And it comes down to our politics of the undeserving poor and our desire to punish those who we think of as the undeserving poor. And in the American context, that tends to be people of color, right? And it's those politics that animate almost every discussion we have in American society, whether we're talking about Medicaid programs and expansions, or whether we're talking about universal health care, whether we're talking about school funding, all of these issues, right? They come back to those politics of the undeserving poor, and they animate everything that we do. And so if we don't find a way to defang and disentangle our decision-making from the politics of the undeserving poor, we are going to be stuck in these same debates over and over and over again. It also includes the high and increasing infant and maternal mortality rates. The fact that infant and maternal mortality rates are increasing for women of color 50 years after the civil rights movement should tell us that this is still a very serious problem that we have yet to fully get behind and understand. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the history, but I'm not going to go overboard in it because we don't have enough time. But I want to talk about some of the history that we've incorporated into our curriculum at the University of Kansas Medical Center, and then talk about how that curriculum has been instrumental to a project of repair. And that project of repair has a number of domains that are looking at how do we repair the harms that have been caused by this history. It starts in plantation medicine. The business of slave medical care was a big business. Involuntary medical experimentation was a hallmark of enslavement. Apprenticeships, private practice, colleges, hospitals, journals, and state medical societies were all based in the traffic in and exploitation of Black bodies. Heroic purges, bleedings, and cathartics were often tried first on slaves to prove their efficacy. Enslaved medicine constituted the majority of business earnings for most Southern physicians in the antebellum period. Doctors routinely advertised in Southern newspapers that they would pay cash for Black people suffering from chronic diseases. And this was not only relegated to the South. There were many Northern medical schools that also practiced in this traffic. Some slaves who had become too old or too sick to work or breed were sold to doctors expressly for experimentation.
Oh my God.
The first biomedical encounter by a person who was enslaved often started with a soundness practice, right? Doctors charged as much for this certification as they did for disease treatments. A pronouncement of health would cost between $2 and $10 in 1850. And this excerpt here from this novel, Brazil, by Errol Lincoln Uis, is a good example of what that soundness practice looked like. And you can read it there. I don't have to read it for you, but you can see, right, that this was a critical part of the introduction of biomedicalization in the slave context, right? And that doctors played a central role in not only, right, asserting that a slave was eligible or that was sound enough to be bought, but doctors also played crucial roles in determining whether or not slaves were legitimately sick and therefore could be excused from work. Doctors played a central role in that. And they were inherently conflicted in that role that they played because they were paid by slave owners who had a decided interest in making sure that certain things weren't recognized as legitimate illnesses. For instance, if you were claiming that you could not work because you had been severely beaten or because you had been raped, right, or suffered any kind of trauma, those things were generally not recognized as things that a doctor would say, yes, this person is legitimately ill and therefore cannot work, right? So doctors played a central role in that during this period. I want to touch upon a few examples of just how pertinent this was during this period. And we can, one example is that of smallpox variolation testing in the US. So any of you from the Boston area will recognize some of these names. Dr. Zabdiel Boylston conducted some of the early studies in Boston testing smallpox inoculations in 1721. Boylston performed the first surgical operation by an American physician. He did the first removal of gallbladder stones in 1710 and the first removal of a breast cancer tumor in 1718. But he was also the first physician to perform smallpox inoculations in North America. He learned the concept of variolation from Minister Cotton Mather, who was informed by one of his slaves of the widespread practice in Africa. And so his first 250 subjects were enslaved blacks. And after seeing success with them, and only after seeing success with them, did Boylston test the method on his own son. And when Thomas Jefferson learned about this, he got into the game as well. He wanted to test Edward Jenner's smallpox vaccine, which was derived from cowpox, versus traditional variolation methods. So in 1801, Jefferson obtained 200 doses of the cowpox-based vaccine from doctors up in Boston. And like Boylston, Jefferson first tested the vaccine on his slaves, both from his plantation and from a few of his neighbors' plantations. And for a dramatic demonstration for his scientific peers, Jefferson ordered a vaccinated slave to be injected with live smallpox pus from another sufferer. And only after seeing success with the slaves did Jefferson vaccinate his family at Monticello. And he famously talks about having done so in his biography, while omitting the fact that he first tested it on the slaves there. And so he initially wrote that he had performed the experiment on some of my own family, which could have been technically true since he had fathered some of the slaves on the plantation, but he meant to apply that he had tested it on his white family. Let's switch gears now and talk about the process of biologizing race and what that has meant for us. In the 19th century, European and American intellectuals gave race a veneer of biology, transforming it into the assumption that a few specific phenotypic features are good proxies for innate morphological and or genetic differences between groups of people so defined as races. And how did that happen? How did that occur? It occurred through biomedical scholarship. Such as Nott and Glitton's Types of Mankind in 1856. And you will notice here that skulls really became like a central feature of racialization. They became such an important symbol for indicating racial difference because contrasting skulls was supposedly a way to contrast the primitive simplicity of the Negro brain with the civilized complexity of a white brain. And so highlighting skulls was also a way to indicate that differences were proven by the science of comparative anatomy. And you can see here that what was particularly of emphasis was the slope of the skull. And the slope of the skull was said to resemble, right, that as you went further down the great chain of racial being, getting closer to apes, right? And Europeans supposedly have this very high slope skull close to 90 degrees. Here we also see a couple of other variations on this theme from multiple other sources. And you can see, right, this emphasis on the facial angle, or the so-called facial angle, that was supposed to be a demonstration, right, of one's advancement from primitive beast all the way up to most advanced and intelligent white European being. So important was this that there were a number of devices used supposedly to measure these skulls. And this we have from Samuel George Morton, Crania Americana, a detailed description of how a facial goniometer is used. He talks about all the different mechanisms and how you sort of arrange the contraption, right, to straddle the the nasal bone, and then the vertical limb D is allowed to fall back to touch limb K, and a degree measurement is made on the angular scale. They try to make this very scientific. Here is another one designed by Paul Broca, who's physician, anatomist, anthropologist, and pioneer of modern neurosurgery and the study of localized brain function and anthropometry. He was the founder in the field of craniometry. Broca thought that the prognathic facial angle and the cephalic index, or the relationship between the brain's length and width, were more important than actual brain size as the main indicators of intelligence. He was wrong on both fronts. Skulls that measured closer to right angle indicated supposed higher intelligence. And he also thought the cephalic index was a directly proportional with intelligence, with the most intelligent European group being long-headed, while the least intelligent Negro group being short-headed. So a lot of this came from ideas at this point in time about the forebrain being the center of intelligence, right? And the idea that if Europeans had like this skull at more of a right angle, it meant that they had more volume in their forebrain, and that meant higher intelligence. And all of this was racialized. And just to be sure, the skulls that they measured often were not skulls from different populations, and when they were, they manipulated the measurements to make it seem as if there was some major difference between skulls from people of different regions of the globe. And there really weren't. And Stephen Jay Gould has done a wonderful job of demonstrating that in his book, The Mismeasure of Man. Switching gears a little bit, right, in terms of still on the idea of how racialization occurred and this biomedical scholarship through which it occurred. Here we point to the work of Samuel Cartwright, who was a major figure in the racialization of biomedicine. In here, this report from the New Orleans Medical and Surgical Journal, right, where he reports on the diseases and physical peculiarities of the Negro race, where he says, in this report, I briefly enumerate some of the more striking anatomical and physiological differences separating the Negro from the white man. Attention is also called to the fact that the same medical treatment which would benefit or cure a white man would often injure or kill a Negro because of the differences in the organic or physical characters imprinted in the hand of nature on the two races. The facts enumerated are just as well known and established in that branch of medicine embracing comparative anatomy and physiology as the size and motion of the planets in astronomy. And if this doesn't seem to hold together logically and make sense, it's because it doesn't, right? You are very right to point that out and have that thought. But this was all part of the process of a racialized imagination and trying to put the racial hierarchies that existed at the time into a discourse of biology that would supposedly, right, give justification for it. To say that our racial hierarchies are biologically ordained and not that we created them socially. Another important stereotype around race and racialization in medicine that emerges during this time is the idea that Black people were insensitive to pain or less sensitive to pain. And to this point, an early treatise by Benjamin Moseley, where he first iterates this in biomedical discourse, where we can see that the idea that Blacks are less sensitive to pain is one of the most persistent and harmful theories of racial difference. In this 1787 manual, Moseley claimed that Black people could bear surgical operations much more than white people, noting that what would be the cause of insupportable pain to a white man, a Negro could almost disregard. And to illustrate this, he added, I've amputated the legs of many Negroes who've held the upper part of the limb themselves. And to this day, pain management remains one of the most persistent health inequities in all of medicine across all fields and for all races, but increasing according to darker skin color. So we saw this in every field of medicine. A good example is the field of pediatrics, which took on special significance as a way of demonstrating that racial differences were natural and hereditary rather than products of discrimination. There was rampant and sometimes contrasting stereotypes of Black children that has historically placed them in one of three modes. They were either hardy and super vital exotics, or they were aliens or little monsters. And this happened throughout all of allopathic medicine. One of the major works of the time, however, that really had lasting impact for generations was this work, Race, Traits, and Tendencies of the American Negro by Friedrich Hoffman. And it occurred or came out in the very late 19th century. Hoffman was a pioneer statistician. He worked for Prudential Insurance Company. He was also an avid eugenicist, and his work showed great statistical prowess, supposedly. But he made enormous contributions to the field of public health. He was the first to link cancer to diet and to tobacco use. And he also helped found the National Tuberculosis Association and the American Cancer Society. However, in this work, his goal was to prove that American Blacks were uninsurable. He used demographic figures, morbidity and mortality tables, as well as miscegenation rates and incarceration trends as his data points. These sources included Benjamin Gould's Anthropological Statistics of American Soldiers. It also included the 1890 US Census and Freedmen's Bureau hospital reports. So he conglomerated all this data together, and it was the largest compilation of data about Black Americans that was then available, and the largest one for many years after this. One Yale professor described it as the definitive way to study the Negro problem. So what were some of the conclusions? Well, one of them was that Negro school children present a better physical type than do the children of whites. And he wrote this in order to juxtapose this fact with the higher mortality rates that he found for Blacks. It is not the conditions of life, but in the race traits and tendencies that we find the causes of excessive mortality. So he's, on the one hand, trying to paint Blacks as these super hardy, like, folks that are bred for hard work, but at the same time, right, their terrible habits are the things that are killing. The central fact deducible from the results of this investigation into the traits and tendencies of the colored population in this country is plainly and emphatically the powerful influence of race in the struggle for life. Now, here's the kicker, right? Hoffman aggregated his data, thereby obscuring any relationship between cause and effect, other than the single commonality of race itself. And so on the grounds of this method alone, the bulk of Hoffman's claims and conclusions should have easily been toppled. However, they weren't. The voices of praise largely drowned out the criticism. Race traits remained the standard of excellence for statistical research into race and health for many, many decades. So this has all been, sort of some examples, right, of the history that we try to impart to our medical learners to get a deeper understanding of how we've come to the point we are. And one of those points that we're at, right, has seen this history systematically built into algorithmic decision-making throughout the field of medicine. When we talk about the ubiquity of algorithms, they are everywhere. Their use began primarily in the 1970s, and from that point on, algorithms and artificial intelligence have become constants in patients' lives in ways that most patients are completely unaware about. From automated intake processes in primary care to scoring systems that evaluate newborns' health conditions, patients regularly encounter these technologies, whether they know it or not. And insurance companies also use algorithms to determine risk and adjust the cost of care. Probably most alarmingly is the way that a number of race corrections figure into the algorithmic decision making in all sorts of different fields. For a very good read on this, I highly recommend this New England Journal of Medicine article by my friend David Jones and colleagues, where they go through systematically and evaluate all the different ways that there are race corrections in various algorithmic decision-making processes in different fields of medicine, right? And they began with the spirometer. Lundy Braun, in her book, Breathing Race into the Machine, really does a very good job illuminating this history, right? The device is basically a calibrated bucket placed upside down in water. And the volume of exhaled air from fully inflated lungs could accurately be measured by exhaling into a tube leading into the bucket. The original Dr. John Hutchinson's spirometer of 1846 is where when Dr. Hutchinson coined the term vital capacity, meaning capacity for life, when he realized that the compromise of this crucial measurement was predictive for premature mortality. And because of the strong correlation between vital capacity and mortality, Hutchinson argued that it should be utilized in actuarial predictions for life insurance policies. It's coming all back around. However, early measurements in differences between Black folks and white folks in spirometry caused there to be a race correction. So in the US, spirometers apply factors of between 10 and 15% for individuals labeled Black, 4 to 6% for people labeled Asians. Hopefully, you may be at an institution that has started, right, to challenge some of these race corrections. However, it's still important to know, right, how these came to be. We can trace the race correction in spirometry all the way back to Thomas Jefferson's Notes on the State of Virginia, where he discussed the deficiencies of the pulmonary apparatus of Blacks. This was common, right, where plantation physicians used Jefferson's statement to support slavery, believing that forced labor was a way to vitalize the blood of slaves. Samuel Cartwright, who we discussed earlier, right, was the first to use Hutchinson's spirometer to record deficiencies in pulmonary function in Black persons. And the massive Gould study of Civil War soldiers validated Cartwright's results. So Gould published his study in 1869, reporting that full Blacks have less lung capacity than whites. And Gould analyzed his data without any adjustment for height, age, or attention to working and living conditions of newly emancipated slaves. And this included people who lived in very small quarters and had to cook and heat their homes by open flames inside the house. And if we see here, we take a zoom, we can see, right, the race correction in this historic spirometer. Now they're all computer-based, right, and it's made it much easier to take the race correction out, but you can see here in this historic spirometer. We also have race corrections in cardiology, including the American Heart Association's Get With the Guidelines Heart Failure Risk Score. The input variables include systolic blood pressure, blood urea nitrogen, sodium, age, heart rate, history of COPD, and race. And the race correction adds 3 points to the risk score if the patient is not Black, which increases the estimated probability of death, right? So when you put that race correction into the algorithm, it regards Black patients as lower risk, thus raising the threshold for using clinical resources for Black patients. We can also see this in nephrology. Many medical schools, spurred by medical students, right? Your generation, the younger generation, are starting to take the race correction out of GFR calculated. But here we see that the input variables are creatine levels, age, sex, and race. The clinical inequity that results from this, right? We see that we can put that in right there. You see the different coefficients, right, of the race correction. The clinical inequity is that the equations give higher GFR values for Black patients, suggesting better kidney function. And the higher GFR values delay referral to specialist care or listing for kidney transplantation. Here in the kidney donor risk index, there's a similar race correction where we see the input variables, age, height, weight, hypertension, diabetes, etc., and race. The race correction increases the predicted risk of kidney graft failure if the donor is Black, an adjustment intermediate between hypertension and diabetes, and that for elevated creatinine. So when that goes in, it not only reduces the pool of Black kidney donors in the US, but also reduces the pool of eligible kidneys for Black patients, because most patients end up getting kidneys donated from family members. And this is not only the case in those like treatment algorithms, it's also the case, right, in the way that hospitals think about admissions. I point to this recent article in the Washington Post, right, where they talk about medical algorithms that favor white patients over sicker Black patients. These algorithms dramatically underestimates the health needs of the sickest Black patients, amplifying long-standing racial disparities in medicine. Similar race corrections exist in oncology, they exist in obstetrics, urology, and orthopedics. And despite the racial health inequities existing across the board in every single clinical field of medicine, none of these race corrections are designed to help enhance the screening, assessment, or care of patients of color. Each of them works for the benefit and enhanced protection of white patients, yet they are guised as tools to help increase efficiency and prevent the waste of medical resources. So why are they so popular? One of the reasons is because they offer a cognitive get-out-of-jail-free card for the medical profession. These practitioners then don't have to bother asking the question of why. The answer to which is always points back to the impacts of structural racism and how it shapes health outcomes in all of the following, whether we're talking about stress and accelerated aging, income, education level, health insurance status, wealth accumulation, neighborhood and environmental toxic exposures, or food delivery systems, zoning laws, and urban and rural infrastructures, and access to healthcare. Now, to switch gears, we ask ourselves with our repair project, how do we repair the harms caused by centuries of neglect, exploitation, and abuse in clinical encounters by biomedical systems of knowledge that have justified this mistreatment of people of color by propagating and upholding theories of race, racial difference, and racial inferiority? This is the foundational question of our repair project. It's a theoretical framework that started at the University of California, San Francisco, and has now grown into a national repair framework that includes not only UCSF, but KU Medical Center and Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. We are a growing network of repair. And that the idea is that we use that founding question in the theoretical framework for coordinating institutional trainings, community collaboration, and anti-racism curriculum throughout the university. It's based on 4 foundational pillars. The first is history, that we have to know this history. We have to know the history of how biomedicine perpetuates racism and reinforces theories of racial difference. And then we can move on to the project of decolonization, decolonizing the health sciences from bench to bedside. And at that point, we move on to further action strategies. strategies to address structural racism and other isms from a socio-ecological perspective. And the final pillar is accountability, envisioning how the field of biomedicine can repair these harms and being accountable to the communities we serve. At the University of Kansas Medical Center, our repair project has taken those 4 pillars and used them to ground 4 different initiatives that I'm going to briefly touch upon. They are curriculum development, faculty and staff training, clinical care, and community accountability. So when we look at our foundations of history and the history of systemic racism in medicine, it's important because it not only creates biased and racist content that promotes stereotype, but also diminishes empathy, and then it perpetuates disparities in patient care, and that contributes to poor health outcomes and health inequities. Our team of threadheads for diversity, health equity, and inclusion includes the following there. We came up with a list of objectives that were structured according to AAMC and LCME objectives for how do we increase the instruction and competency around understanding structural and social determinants of health, of which racism is the largest one in the United States. So there you see the goals that we have, that we drew up, right? And use those goals and objectives to begin to go through our curriculum and systematically, right, increase the content that talks about structural determinants of health and weave that all throughout the curriculum. It looks something like this. We are doing this with currently our problem-based learning cases that all of our medical students go through, right? So we have taken every single PBL case. We have identified and removed all instances where race was used as a proxy for biogenetic differences. That we wrote our new set of objectives that we just saw for DHEI and aligned them with the repair project pillars. Then we developed new learning modules on the history of systemic racism in medicine and structural competency aligned with those objectives. Then we examined all the PBL cases for missed opportunities to teach about social and structural determinants of health. We're not only doing this with our problem-based learning cases, we're also next going to do this with our standardized patients. And then we will begin doing this in clerkship instruction for third-year medical students. So we rewrote the PBL cases aligned with these new structural competency objectives, where considerations of social and structural determinants of health are regularly a part of the diagnostic thinking and treatment considerations. And then we have assessment for learners and evaluation of the implementation. Now, for faculty development, we did this because the students continue to see missed opportunities and long for meaningful integration across the whole curriculum. And they have continued to point out to us how the inclination of some of our faculty is to skip or whitewash the content rather than make changes. And so faculty have knowledge gaps and general discomfort with some of these concepts and ideas. And we realize that they need as much training about this as some of our students do. Some of the faculty need a little more training because our students are a little more open to the idea. Faculty concerns about workload time, of course, get taken into consideration. And we also know that they have concerns around being judged, right? And the content becoming less rich. So we try to juggle all this in terms of structuring faculty trainings to address their concerns, but also make sure that they're not undermining the new content that we're putting in. And this has included a large CME series on the history of racism in the United States that covered the following themes. And there are myself and some of my colleagues who are responsible for all the different CME content there. We designed this series that we had very large participation of faculty and staff to really make sure that we were all on the same page, have the same language to talk about the history of racism and understand its structural impact on health. We have also initiated a book series that we have for faculty and staff, where we talk about some of the major works that look at how structural racism works, right, and how it works to impact health. And those are some of the books that we have covered in that book series. Now we want to talk about how the meat or the rubber really hits the road with this. And this we are very proud of. We are developing health equity accountability dashboards for the entire health system at KU. It starts, right, with our step one is review of the health and equity literature for all clinical fields and find out, right, where all clinical fields typically, are underperforming when it comes to health equity. We identify and differentiate those inequities by field, right? So those include, right, health outcomes, but it also includes process outcomes, right? Such as door-to-door procedure times, screening and referral rates, right? Pain assessment and management decisions, and prescription decisions. We have began to collate all that so we know where to look, and not just looking for where the literature tells us, but we know that these are the usual suspects where we may find inequities. This is our team who's working on this together. We began consulting and partnering with clinicians in each department to refine health equity indicators and coding within the electronic medical record. Then we collect health equity data for all clinical departments, going 5 years back, and we will continue to do so for 5 years forward, but we use that 5 years back as the baseline. We're not only collecting the EMR data, we're also collecting and merging the EMR data with patient satisfaction data, because we realized that, and we got this from patients, that a lot of it is in the face-to-face treatment, right? And it's not, all of that is not all discoverable in the EMR data. So then we analyze the data according to race, ethnicity, gender, and language as available in the EMR, and then we compile that data into a health equity accountability dashboard for each department. And then, based on the inequities we find, we are going to implement evidence-based interventions, right, to target those inequities. The final part is the community accountability part. And in these next 5 minutes, really want to share with you what that looks like. For our community accountability aspect of repair, we wanted to do an oral history project to collect local stories of harm and get the community vision for what repair should look like. And better understand, right, individual, family, and community harm caused by racism, and identify what we need to do to repair it. So what are the harms that the local communities carry with them? What are their inherited memories and lived experiences of harm? What restorative actions would it take to repair those harms? And how should our institution and other area institutions work with communities to design and implement this restorative work? The first part started off with community listening sessions. We did small groups of 10 to 15 participants. And we did, our target was to reach 150. We held these at community centers, churches, and other community spaces, and they were moderated by a trained community partner using an interview guide designed with a trauma-informed care format. And they partnered with a researcher. So we had a community member who was doing these interviews and asking most of the questions. From those 150, we select out 30 for individual interviews, 30 people who had the most salient stories, right? And this occurs in 2 parts. We do a one-on-one interview. We are partnering with the Black Archives in Mid-America to make sure that the data from this project is community owned. And so those recordings all live at the Black Archives of Mid-America. And so those one-on-one interviews, we have 2 parts to it. First, we just ask them to come in and expand on their story. The second part is we ask them to go and take pictures of things that represent past harms, and things that represent repair. And then we ask them to come back and narrate the photos that they have taken. And we pay folks generously to do that. Our next steps, right, is to analyze the oral histories using thematic analysis, validate the results with the community, host community action labs to define what repair should look like. We develop a report with recommendations for the institution, curate an oral history project at the Black Archives of Mid-America, and then finally, we plan to host a truth and reconciliation style event where community members present findings to our mayor, to our city council, and university leadership. There are some preliminary findings that we can share. One, just listen to us. Listen to us when we tell you that something is wrong with us. We heard this over and over again, that many participants reported that when they go to the doctor, medical professionals assume that they are not intelligent enough to know what, if anything, is wrong with them. And consequently, they do not do a thorough history or assessment or order all necessary lab work to make an accurate diagnosis. And instead, assumptions are made based on racial profiling, assuming that the patient is either suffering from diabetes, hypertension, an STI, or is pregnant, or is drug seeking. And as a result, they prescribe medications or recommend procedures based on these assumptions and not based on what the patient is actually going through. Another common refrain, don't just treat my symptoms, care enough to find out what is wrong with me. Many participants reported that going to the doctor is this constant struggle to be seen and treated as if their lives matter. Participants report needing to pay special attention to their dress, to their speech, and to their overall demeanor in order to be treated like someone worth saving. And many participants are haunted by memories of loved ones who died too young because they feel like the medical professionals did not treat them as if their life was worth saving. And then finally, one of the most heart-wrenching ones I want to share with you is that we continue to hear stories from Black women to say that healthcare providers are overly eager to give them hysterectomies, even for benign conditions where one is not warranted. This goes back a long ways in American society, over 100 years, to the height of the eugenics movement. They used to call this the Mississippi appendectomy, when Black women would go in for any routine surgery and emerge from that surgery having also had a hysterectomy or had her tubes tied. And this is still happening today. One participant was subjected to a hysterectomy when she was pregnant, and her healthcare provider did not bother to give her a pregnancy test before the procedure. She was told offhand by a nurse afterwards, by the way, it turns out you were pregnant when we took your uterus out. These are the stories that are so important to us, right? So important for us to catalog, so important for us to understand. If we want, as an institution, to get it right, if we want to begin repair these harms and be in conversation with communities about how we repair these harms and understand these labels that we have put on patients, the way we have stereotyped them, it is essentially necessary that we do this work. And only then can we begin to move toward repair. So with that, I thank you all so much for having me. It has been my extreme pleasure to be with you all this morning. And I really wish I could have been there in person. And hopefully one day I will be. Here are some sources just in case anybody needs them. You can feel free to email me. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Glenn, for your talk. It has been so wonderful. We have time for 1 or 2 questions from our audience. If you have any questions, comments, discussion for Dr. Glenn, please come up, speak into the mic, and we will have a discussion.
I just want to say thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I felt seen, heard throughout your presentation. And so selfishly, my question for you, doing the incredible and impactful work that you do, how do you persist? How do you stay determined? How do you lead others when society is wavering on their commitment to these initiatives? And just how, that's all. And I'm Ren.
Thank you so much for that question. It's a great question.
Yes.
And, you know, really, this work fulfills me much more than any other work that, you know, we have to do as academics, right? This is the work that is truly sustains me. You ask how I endure.
Right.
I wouldn't endure as an academic if I wasn't doing this work.
Right.
Because I wouldn't feel as fulfilled. I wouldn't feel as connected, right? I got into this work, you know, not because when I grew up, I thought I was going to be an engineer. I loved math. I had no idea I'd be a historian. I had no idea how important history would be to me, right, and to us, right, as a society and as a people, trying to make sure that we solve some of the biggest challenges that we have before us that are facing our generation. And, you know, so when you ask, like, how do I endure? It's really, I wouldn't endure if I wasn't doing this work. If I was doing any other mundane work that wasn't as impactful, that wasn't as meaningful, I would not endure.
But for like self-care, like those boundaries, I'm sorry, I really appreciate that, but I'm trying to get some like tangible things, like what can I do?
Oh, another thing, never do it in isolation.
Okay.
It's the connections with finding like-minded folks who have similar ideological and political commitments and working with communities, those folks in communities that are really trying to do this work as well. It's those partnerships and those collaborations. That's what sustains me. That's what brings me joy. And because they're not always about work, right? Whether they're about getting together and having a barbecue or playing cards, right? That we have to regularly schedule that time to be communities together, right? That's what is sustaining.
Thank you, Alia.
Dr. Glenn, I thank you also. A reflection and comment. I teach at the University of Missouri, a neighboring state, in a problem-based learning curriculum. And a constant frustration that I experience in teaching first and second year medical students, and I'm sure your faculty do as well, is what the students are assessed for does not reflect the social determinants of health that you emphasize are so important and that we know are so important. Time and time again, I have tried to introduce into our problem-based learning curriculum greater emphasis upon the social determinants of health. But when the rubber meets the road in the classroom and you ask the students, spend time studying this, they will reply, that's not what I'm going to be assessed about. I don't want to spend additional time on that because it's not going to get me into the place that I want to go. So in addition to all of the other things that you were doing, I think we must add changing the exam structure, the method of assessment, so as to reflect what it is that we recognize as being important. And I'll just add that we here in this program, the SEPA program, recognize that whatever we do with teachers in K through 12 programs really can only count when we deal with what they are being assessed for at the end of each year in their teaching, because that's where the rubber meets the road.
You're exactly right. And I'm so glad you made that comment. We have to have a lot more of this content. And for medical learners, when we talk about step 1, step 2, When we talk about licensing examinations, I can say that in the past 2 years, the American Board of Pediatrics actually, because of some loud voices on their governing board, decided to try for the first time out of any licensing board to include content on social and structural determinants of health and racism as a determinant of health on their licensing exam. I was privileged enough to be asked to be on that committee to devise a set of questions around these issues. We devised 20 questions and submitted them to the board, and they approved 18. And they wrote out on the pediatrics licensing exam that residents take at the completion of their residency just last year, right? And I don't say that like to try to brag, but it's just to acknowledge you're exactly right. These have to be top-down things that students are assessed on in order for them to take them seriously. We are also, a few of my colleagues in the repair network are also in conversation with folks at the AAMC and the LCME to say we need stronger statements in those objectives that medical schools have to meet for their accreditation in order to protect schools that are in red states that are starting to come under attack for any kind of anti-racism scholarship and content being taught. We need absolutely firm statements and objectives to say that your institution will not be accredited if you are not teaching this content. And schools in red states desperately need that. We need that cover. So we're trying to recognize it. These societies are playing catch up when it comes to these issues. And we need folks like yourselves continuing to raise that alarm, because there's been a number of folks for generations that have struggled to gain real estate within medical school curriculum. And they always say, like, look, we have to teach to the test. And if the test doesn't cover this, we're not gonna take it seriously. But we know that for the new generation of healthcare providers that we are trying to train are not going to meet the challenges before them if we don't give them this information. But I thank you for that comment. You're right on the money. You're exactly right.
Unfortunately, that is all we have time for. I want to say thank you to our wonderful audience. Thank you all for being here, being present, and hopefully implementing some things from this talk. And once more, thank you again, Dr. Glenn. This has truly been amazing, and I look forward to connecting soon.
Thank you so much, Eileen. Thank you to everybody for having me. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Dr. Glenn has, we've exited Zoom with him, but I also want to thank him. It was a very extremely important and powerful talk. I realize there is so much in that talk to reflect upon. There is so much for us to discuss as a community, and I hope that, that there may be some venues and some opportunities for us, maybe even a bit in the town hall that is about to come. So we can take a moment. We can take a moment to process this, to reflect on it, to think about how we can apply this, as Ilea mentioned, in our projects, and work as a community to promote health equity and dismantle systemic racism. And that was an extremely powerful talk. So thank you, Ilea, for bringing Dr. Glenn to our community to share those remarks. But now, I guess one more small bit of detail. We've had a lot of really interesting talks, and people are asking about slides, so this is a bit of a more pragmatic comment, but we will be, for all the presenters who are willing to share their slides, we do collect them and we do bring those slides and put them up on our website. So if you are interested in following up on the references or the comments that Dr. Glenn made, we will try to get those slides and we will try to make those available if he's generous enough to share his slides. And I'm expecting he would be, I hope. So, yep, okay, thumbs up from Ilea. So wonderful. So I do hope you'll have opportunities, we'll all have opportunities to access that information again. But now, it's taking a deep breath and acknowledging that this is the end of our time together and that we did it. We did it together, everyone. We are an amazing community. As I said in my opening remarks, the community makes the conference. The community absolutely makes the conference, and from the moment we all stepped in the room together, we just, there were people of various areas of the country and various first, 15th SEPAs, all different backgrounds, each one of us having something that we know that someone else doesn't, and everyone else in this room knowing something that nobody else does, and getting a chance to share. And so, first and foremost, I want to thank all of you for spending your time with us in this community this week. I would also like to thank the tireless members of the Genetic Science Learning Center, the teams, even Molly, who is like, I gotta go move some, sorry to call you out, or everybody else. Let's see, we have Molly, we have Kagan, who is doing all of our amazing tech, we have Arthur, who's been taking our photographs, we have Claudia, we have Rochelle, we have Harini. Who am I leaving out? Anybody? That's it, okay. But I also want to acknowledge Travis Kelleher of the Baylor College of Medicine and all of the hard work that you have done to live stream and to make this conference, these plenaries, these talks inclusive and accessible even for those who are not physically present in our midst. We appreciate all the work and all the tech skills that you bring and the leadership that you've provided and the ability to make these accessible. So thank you for that. A few final reminders for those who, at this point in the conference, I do have to have everything written on note cards, but actually that's the point, because one of the points I want to make is that any of you who agreed very generously to take notes, either for a breakout session or for one of these plenary sessions, please deliver those notes by email to Claudia. Those instructions were provided in the packets, and otherwise we're going to have to send you an email with Roz from Monsters, Inc. who's saying, get your paperwork in, you forgot your paperwork. You'd appreciate it if you saw the movie. I may have to watch it again on the plane. I also want to very strongly encourage you to get your evaluations in. Allison, could you do me a kind favor and hold up that piece of paper with the QR codes? You didn't know you were doing this, but I forgot to bring it up to the stage. So look, she's modeling this lovely set of QR codes, and you have two surveys to fill out. One is for the present, one is for the one describes the present of the conference, and one describes the future. The conference evaluation, and by that, that's metaphorical, but what I really mean is there is a conference evaluation for this conference. Please provide feedback. We need more voices. We need our NIH, one of the comments we've received from NIH is that we're not getting a big enough return rate on our conference evaluations. The more evaluations we get, the more voices we get, the more encouragement it gives to get this conference funded. And so please, please fill out that conference evaluation. There is also an evaluation to talk about the future of SciEd. And that's about location preferences or virtual or timing preferences, anything you'd like to say to help shape where SciEd 2024 will be and what it will look like. We want your feedback. As I said when I mentioned this yesterday, we take all feedback seriously, we encourage it, and we look forward to hearing your voices. For those of you who are connected with colleagues who have already left, please also do me the kind favor and share that word. Fill out your surveys. We can really, really use them. And I believe that those are the notes that I have left in my slides. Without further ado, Tony, I will give you the time for the town hall.
Well, thank you very much. I think we need to give the Grand SEPA thanks to all of you who organized the various sessions, and particularly for the organizing committee. Can I get one of these mics to work? Much better. We've been standing far too long and sitting far too long. So this is a chance for you folks to provide some, and this shouldn't be taped. Okay,